Welcome to the Simply Be Found Huddle, where Dean and Rob talk about everything business, marketing, and just everything that we possibly can. Today we have our guest, Mike. Mike, if I read over your stuff correctly, it looked like you've been part of over 200 masterminds and have been doing this a long time for working with different businesses and just helping them kind of go over and overcome a lot of different stuff. Why don't you introduce yourself and correct anything I may have said wrong on that?
Oh, no, it's all good. It's all good, Rob. So, hi, everyone. I am Mike Handcock. I'm the chairman of the Circle of Excellence group of companies. And for 20 years next year, we've been around the world many, many times. We've got clients in more than 50 countries. I've been to 114 countries. And we've run, I think, close to 350 masterminds now in 20 of those countries. So we do get around a bit, and we help entrepreneurs and conscious leaders play a much bigger game than what they ever thought possible. That's been our world.
Awesome. Well, what kind of companies do you typically usually work with?
You know, primarily we're working with companies in a growth phase that are in the service industries. That's our primaries, but we've done retail and we've done manufacturing. We've done all sorts of things. We've got a green tech company at the moment. We've taken from an idea with the founder. It literally came to me and said, "This is all my friends tell me I'm crazy. This is a stupid idea." And he told me the idea. I said, "Look, I think it's one of the best ideas I've heard in ages." That's currently being listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So we've got involved in different things at all sorts of levels from around the world.
Cool.
So when you say services, Mike, what kind of services are you talking? Like, there's such a wide variety of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you primarily function or where are you guys most efficient at? Let's put it that way.
Dean, our probably our sweet spot is coaches, consultants, speakers, and entrepreneurs, particularly in the tech space.
Okay,
cool. That's kind of a really interesting kind of area because it all combines together and connects. But there's so many different verticals within that area that could totally explore to. So when you're working with different people inside of the space, obviously we're inside of that space. What do you typically work with them on? Is it being able to get more customers, fix their copy, work? What are you typically doing?
or is it the whole show?
Or is it kind of everything?
That's an open-ended question, guys. Look, honestly, I've never found competition to us anywhere in the world because we do the whole A to Z. So if somebody comes to us, we're working on everything from their mindset, their spirituality, to their copy, to their customer experience, to their marketing, to their sales funnels, to their branding. The list goes on and on. I mean, given that we've done this for so long, we've run over 3,000 business events and worked with 300,000 people. So that's enabled us to create over 140 business models, which basically fast track solving everything in business. So, so nothing's ever been a problem for us to solve. Certainly not in the last 10 years. So we do the whole 9 yards, and it's so funny. During COVID, we expected a lot of our clients to come to us and go, "Oh my goodness, I'm not making sales, etc., etc." But all these people, and some of them are pretty high profile, some of them have got globally recognized positions, came to us and said, "Was I a frog in a past life or something?" They're asking deep spiritual questions, or should I go and study the Anunnaki now because of COVID or something like that? We get involved in all sorts of stuff, which makes it fun, right?
Oh, that's hilarious. Now the companies or the entrepreneurs you're working with, are they startups? Are they? I mean, you said they're in a growth phase, but like, do you work with the solopreneurs? I don't, or like the single entrepreneurs? Are you looking for businesses that have more employees, or But I get the growth factor because if they're stagnant, they're not really thinking forthcoming, if you will, or forward, I guess would be the better word. So is there a particular sweet spot on the size of the company?
Yeah, sort of outside of that, Dean, I think our sweet spot is really companies that are turning over somewhere between 1 and 10 million.
Okay.
And they might have, some of them are solopreneurs, believe it or not. but others of them have probably got anywhere between 2 and 3 and 40 or 50 staff. That's sort of the area. And then once they sort of crack that 10 million barrier, they're looking for more governance stuff, and they're into the, you can't be such a fast moving company. When we tend to work with the company, we can get them to shift and do things real fast. But once you've got 50 employees, you're not as fast as you were when you had 3. So that's been our sweet spot, really. And I think that's our expertise. And whilst we've got companies that we do work with, I mean, probably our biggest company that we work with in terms of size of people has 200,000 people in it.
Wow.
That's
we
great.
Work,
that's
we work
crazy.
really with the chairman of that, and the chairman and founder of that, who's still very intimately involved in the business.
So when I look at that space, so when I look at the tech space, the coach space, the whole 9 yards, and I look at that whole piece, so I went back in time and I put my VC hat on last night, and I was going through and I was just looking at all of our competitors that are out there, because we're getting ready to do kind of not a rebrand, but we're redoing the website because we've made a lot of shifts and we haven't cleaned everything up to be able to match where we've been. That cobbler's kid story where you're not practicing everything you preach, but
Oh yeah,
your stuff
I'm
ends up
rebranding
being
at the moment
lost.
as well. Yeah,
We've all been there. We've all bought that T-shirt. We say we're not going to do it again, but we do it again.
We're still small enough. We pivot. And the problem is we pivot faster than our team can keep up with us.
So I was looking over all of our competition and just looking at everything. So everything you said inside of there, the spirit, the soul of the company, your values of what you have, the copy that's on your website, the marketing messages that you come across with. And I think it's a very interesting space, because when I look at a lot of the competition, I'm like, all right, they're not doing X, Y, Z. You can tell it's different people in different spots doing different parts of their marketing. And I even see this inside of the small business piece. They don't bring the sales piece for one to the table. They don't think about engaging anybody. They don't think about bringing that sales piece to get them to convert. They don't think about the SEO side of, it's either one way or the other. It's super salesy, which looks really spammy, or it's in that combination to where it is all wrote for SEO and has no personality whatsoever. Or sales pages look like blogs. And I'm like, this is just crazy for what I'm seeing out there. Are you seeing that on other businesses, or is it just my mindset looking at that and going, what the hell?
No, you're 100% right, Rob. And I think this is the thing, and I feel sorry for people because they don't really know. But a lot of this is joined together. I mean, essentially everything's joined together. But I guess the typical example, and you guys would have seen this, is a small business, maybe they've got 2, 3, 4 staff, and they go to a branding agency, and the branding agency goes, guess what? The color of this year is teal green, man. And if you're not teal green, you're not in business, right? So we're going to give you a goldfish as a logo, and it's going to be teal green because that's what's it. And then they show you and you go, hang on, but that's not who you are. So whenever we start working with somebody, the very first thing we try and find out is what's their essence. Who are they as a person? What do they want to express to the world? I have to read this because I was talking to a guy before who's got $1 billion idea, literally $1 billion idea. And he's a new potential client. He's an amazing guy. But this is his essence. He said to me, I had to read it because I couldn't remember it. He said to his mother when he was 10 years old, and his mother said, do you know what you want to be when you grow up? He said, all I want to do is change the status quo. Now, that's somebody who was born to disrupt a market, right? You can't give that guy a teal green logo. In fact, this guy comes from a family business which has a legacy of 70 years, which has done work for the president in his country. So it's very, very well known business. And he's now the 35-year-old who's taking this over, but he's going to totally tech this business and disrupt the whole industry. And that's why I said he's sitting on $1 billion business. His idea is extremely good. Now, when you look at somebody like that, and it doesn't have to be the guy with the $1 billion business, it could be anybody. You go, what's in your heart? What's your message to the world? So ours is, we help conscious leaders play a bigger game. That's our why. So then, what are the values that sit around that? And I'll use us as an example. So we have 5 core values. They are love, intuition, freedom, enrichment, and nobility. So that 5 values gives us boundaries. Like there's another podcast I did where we talk about when we knocked back a $1.3 million deal because it didn't meet our values. So that now that you've got boundaries, and now that you've got values, and now that you've got something that's in your heart, you can create your one sentence to the world. Like his is about the status quo, mine's about playing a bigger game. And then from there, you can start a brand, okay? So whether it's your brand or my brand, doesn't matter. And then after that, you can create products and services. And once you've got that, your products and services could be anything from like, jogging shoes to a coaching service. It doesn't matter because it's coming from your heart. And then you just find all the colors and things that line up with that. And they're just expressions of you. That's what Richard Branson did. That's what
I was going to say, Richard. That's totally a Richard Branson play, 100%.
Very much so.
And he made in his whole pieces, he made the customer first and made the journey to what it needs to be, which goes to your sales copy, which goes to every piece of your business, to everything from what you say on your homepage to what you say inside your blog to what you say in social media. All of it is all about what you bring to that customer, from what I've understood from Richard Branson's approach.
100%. And like he's got a it's not a competitor, he's got a compatriot, I'll say, in Malaysia that's been around for 20 years now, Tony Fernandez. Now, Tony Fernandez was an A&R guy at a record company who bought a dying airline for 1 ringgit. I'll put that in perspective. 1 ringgit these days is probably a dime in America. So he bought an airline for a dime. And he based everything on one slogan. And his one slogan was, now everyone can fly. And it became one of the first budget airlines, which Ryanair is not now the biggest budget airline in the world. But I mean, he essentially created that airline, which is today I think it's the biggest airline in Asia, probably the most profitable. It's called AirAsia. They have AirAsia hotels. They have AirAsia rental cars. They've probably got AirAsia, I don't know, cell phones these days. But everything's built around that and built around his personality. In India, the same guy, his name is Vijay Mallya, and he owned an airline called Kingfisher, which eventually went broke because he became too much of a Richard Branson party guy. But for 10 years, I mean, I used to love flying. I've been to India 22 times. I used to love flying Kingfisher. You'd get on there, silver service in economy. The TV comes on. There's Vijay Mallya surrounded by, 20 girls in bikinis welcoming you to his plane. Everything is done. Everything was first class, but you were paying regular prices for it. And apart from him getting too big for his boots and spending too much of his money, or else it would have been still going and still very successful. These are people who are expressing. Elon Musk is expressing who he is inside in things like Tesla and things like SpaceX, etc., etc. And we don't have to become billionaires to do it. We can become quite nicely comfortable millionaires with good homes, good families, and pick the kids up at 3:00 if we want to.
Well, I think the world has taken a shift. It used to be where CEOs were, these what I call Ivory League guys that would just be out there and they went to the special school. And really, that we've kicked the living hell out of CEOs at this point. Most of successful businesses, yes, you have certain corporations that they still fit into that whole mix and that corporate structure. But so many CEOs now for these big corporations, if you look like Elon, he's working on the floor. He comes in, he knows people's names, he knows who they are, and he's approachable. And you can go and talk to him. I mean, if you look at stuff from your past, Dean, was it like that back in your corporate world?
Well, you know what? So Mike, I was in the corporate world in the late 70s and 80s and 90s, early 90s. And I had CEOs that were not approached. You couldn't even get past their EA to talk to them in any way, shape, or form. And then I had other ones that one of them, my favorite one of all times, back in the day when you still had mail stops, he managed by delivering the mail to all the managers and all the middle management people, because that's how he kept a finger on the pulse of the company. So I think it really depends on the person, Rob, more than it was, but there was still that corporate feel, the Fortune 500 feel back in the 80s where, but of course then your VC groups all got involved and started buying and then dismantling companies. And that changed a lot of the CEO attitudes out there when that started happening. So,
I mean, CEOs freak out, especially when they weren't the one controlling the company and they were a hired CEO, and you'd come in and you'd take over their company and dismantle it. And they went wayside, and you found out that they really weren't doing shit because, I mean, yeah, they weren't doing shit. They were going to meetings and playing golf, and going to the country club and drinking a budget. But I mean, it's one of those things to where I think a lot of big corporations today run more like a small business aspect, to where it's a whole different mindset than where we were. And we're seeing that more and more. I think we're even seeing that more past COVID. And I think people want to buy from some company that's more of a personal brand than it is just another, to where you're another number that sits there. So like when I look through our competition, I mean, most of them look at it, they don't even know who their customers are. Which just blows my mind, because if you're going to build, especially if you're going to be in a SaaS market or you're going to be in a membership type of piece and you have a subscription, or you want them to rebuy from you, you have to stay in front of them and you have to be able to build a relationship. Digitally is probably the new way of building those relationships. And I never really looked at it until I started looking at it from that aspect. And Mike, when I was going through your stuff this morning, I was thinking about all that. And I'm like, is it a certain type of brain that ends up going down that way? Because it looks like that's kind of what you coach into people of, it's okay to be you. And it's okay to have that image come across. Am I understanding your kind of approach right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you guys have brought up so many points here that in the last 3 minutes that I could comment on. So let me answer your question, but I'll answer it sort of towards the end. I mean, Dean, I worked for a CEO in the early 90s, and when I got the job, and I was his national sales manager in financial services, and when I met him as an English guy, and he was the first guy in my life I felt like calling him Mister, because he just had that air about him, right?
Yes.
Instead of calling him Fred, I called him Mister. And so he said to me, "Oh no, don't call me Mister." He said, "Call me Fred." He said, "I may be the CEO, but I'm just a custodian of the future." I mean, and he was a brilliant CEO. And then I went from that to my last CEO in corporate, which I reported directly to. I ran the whole sales team for another financial services company. She never came out of her office. She used to have a pallet of Diet Coke delivered to the canteen, and then people had to bring it to her office, and she never came out. Nobody ever met her. So I think we went through that transition, and these days we're seeing businesses realize, hang on, that's not working. We need to become more entrepreneurial. So you're seeing a lot of great companies now. I'm talking big companies that are entrepreneurial. I drive BMW, and I find, I don't know how they are in the States, but I find them very entrepreneurial. Like, you can really talk to people and get around the company and things like that. And then coming to us and your question, Rob, I mean, we really just teach people to express who they are and not be scared of that. And I think what we see, like when we're on the road and we travel 9 months of the year and we're with clients, sort of when we're doing that, we're having breakfast with somebody, lunch with somebody else, and dinner with somebody else. Very rarely do we talk about business. We're talking about, they generally ask us about our interests. And they know my interests. They know that, I'm a musician. Like, I think I've got a bass guitar sitting right next to me, right? So they know that I'm a musician. So they go, "Oh, are you recording anything at the moment of this?" They know my wife, Lundy, loves animals, and they're sort of saying, you guys are so lucky to live in Africa where there's so many animals and blah, blah, blah. Occasionally, there's probably 20% of the conversation that's business oriented, 80% is about the person. And I think if more entrepreneurs, and I didn't do this in corporate life, it was so weird in corporate life that I never told anybody that, I'd spent 12 years as a professional musician and playing in a heavy metal band in the late 80s. And yes, I had long hair and zebra skin tights. I never told anybody that because I was so scared I was going to get fired. These days, it's all over the internet. And these days, there's so much interest that I'm actually recording a new album with that band that I had 40 years ago. So, I mean, you've got to express who you are. And I think the more you're prepared to express authentically who you are, the more you will find your crowd. And the final point on that is most entrepreneurs are so scared in case they upset anybody. I say, F that. You want to polarize people, because I can already tell within 10 seconds of meeting you guys, I can go, I like these people. I can get along with them. We can do something together. We can do some great things together instantly. But, you know, you get on some podcasts, and I know you'll have some guests where you go, that's a stuck-up jackass. And they're not going to share anything of themselves, and they're not going to be authentic and real. And so instantly, you can't access that. So just be more authentic, folks. That's the message.
You mean the people that come on and they basically said the same script over and over and said the same thing on every podcast, and you can't get them out of their own shell, and you ask a question and they don't really answer the question, but they have a script for something that's kind of close. They go with it.
So I got to ask, Mike, do you prefer a 4-string bass or a 5-string bass?
Bass is one of my other instruments. I'm a lead guitar player. That just happens to be sitting here. So 4 strings, because 5, I can't quite handle that yet.
Even though I like the sound of a 5-string better, but I had to ask because you showed that to us. So
I didn't know there was a 4-string and a 5-string bass.
There's 6 strings as well, but you know that's got to be. You got to have really thick hands to play that one.
Oh yeah.
I'm assuming you get different sounds out of each one then.
Definitely, yeah. But most of the sounds in the player, like, you know, it's like these days. You can buy an app and you can go, oh, I want Slash's guitar sound, and you just dial it in on the app and there it is. But you ain't going to sound like Slash because only Slash sounds like Slash. So it's in the fingers.
So we're going to take this back to business and say you sound unique when you do something different, and that's what you have to make yourself look different for the world to see you, to make you stand out. Do you agree with that, Mike? So that's the whole point of everything in business, is you have to stand out, because we all offer the same things, most of us, and we very seldom we have something that's so unique that's never been thought of before. How do we make ourselves stand out? And I think that's how you coach people as well, to be that personable person and stand out for their customers.
Absolutely. But you guys, I don't know if you experienced this. You'll meet somebody new and they'll say, oh no, we're different, and then you'll say, okay, what makes you different? They'll go, we've got really good customer service. And you go, like everybody has. And they go, but our products are really good. Yeah, but everybody's is. So what actually is different? Where's that difference? And I think the true difference comes down to, for most of us, unless you're running a business that employs, you know, like 2,000 staff or something, that difference comes down to you and the type of person, the way you see the world, your values, and the way you live that through your business. You know, and I think that's what endears you to people. And I know there's some changes to that, but I'm talking about for the average business person that's probably listening to this. Well, actually, the average person that's listening to this. Yeah. You want to be different. You don't want to be like anybody else. You want to be unique in yourself. You want to own yourself. Yeah. Most people don't know who they are.
Right. So how do you coach somebody into saying what makes you different? I mean, what's that? I mean, I think we know what makes us different, because it's really Rob and I make the difference for this business, because we are the unique people. We are small business owners. We've got all these different things, but it's our flavor that's going to make us stand out and be a little different than some of the other people out there. Is that how you kind of coach people as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, you dig into it a little bit. So there's the surface difference. So like, just in case the audience doesn't know, we never met until we got on this podcast, right?
That's right. Okay, that's right.
But in the 2 minutes we spent before we went live on the podcast, maybe 3 minutes before we went live, I went, these guys are highly experienced. They've been around. They've got a huge amount of confidence. They know what they're doing. They're totally open to free flow and see where this goes, because they know their stuff and they know how to bring it home and make it great. That's what I see. It's like stands out like the proverbial. So That, by the way, is very unique because I'm probably on 3 podcasts a week and I very rarely see that. But then the second thing is, then you dig into a person's heart and you find out what they really love. So often when a person says, I don't know what makes me different, we'll ask a question like, if I went to your YouTube history and your Amazon history, what do you read and what do you watch? So if you take me for an example, I am constantly watching music videos. I'm subscribed to like all the great guitar players and things like that. I'm constantly watching that. I'm obsessed with Second World War and fighter planes and things like that. I read books that are biographies and I read action-adventure novels because I write them as well. And so, and I'm obsessed with ancient wisdom. So anything that's ancient, archaic, something a little unique, think Graham Hancock, who's not a relation, by the way, even though it's the same name as my father, and he's a lovely guy. Met him a couple of times, but I'm obsessed with that. So if I can take that's part of me and put it into my business, and by the way, if anybody wants to have a look at our website, circleofexcellence.biz, the first thing you will notice on there's a lot of ancient wisdom looking stuff on there.
Yes.
Right? So that's an expression. And if you don't like it, guess what? You're never going to be our client and we don't care. We're not for you. So 7 billion people on the planet. So that's the way everybody should look at it. So if you're listening to this and you love cooking or you love gardening, start expressing that. And when you express that, even if you're a web designer who loves gardening, there's so much you can do with those concepts. And I think once you put that together, that's where the magic happens. X factor in an entrepreneur is where a person's competence and where their passion meets. If you can trigger that axis there of high competence and high passion, that's when you'll stand out above the crowd.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot to be said inside of that entire piece. And you're not going to make everybody happy. And you're not the best fit for anything. And anytime I've tried to bend over backwards for anybody in business, or I've tried to be something I'm not, it has always failed. And it normally costs me more money than it was ever worth. And sometimes I didn't make any profit on it because it cost a lot more than what I made on it. But I mean, we've all bought that T-shirt and tried to be something that we're not. And that doesn't matter if you are a landscaper, if you are a big tech firm, if you're a hairdresser or barber. It doesn't really matter what you are. You have to be true to yourself. And if you're not true to yourself, you're never going to be able to capture the market. So, Dean, you and I can say that you and I make the whole company different for Simply Be Found, when really it's our software that makes it different. And we happen to just be the architects behind the scenes. I think, yes, you and I do it, but right. If I look at it from the outside in, like I was over the last couple, day or so, you have to look at it to where the company is its own salesperson, its own being that lives there with us or without us. So when it's inside of there, it has to have that same personality. Now, the interesting thing is it has the personality of the combination of both of us. And that's what makes a company stand out. So when I go and I look at different websites, different stuff, I see different teams doing different pieces and not everything coming together. And I think in today's world, to make things real, we need things to come together more than they've ever came together before.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay, we've solved that. What's next?
I mean, the world is definitely changing. Now, the question is, are we seeing more businesses fail during this change that were older businesses? Are we seeing more new businesses showing up? Or are we seeing the same failure rate kind of work in between? That's a question I've been trying to figure out myself. What are you seeing out there?
I haven't asked Grok that question, and yet, but I have to say, from my personal observance, I'm seeing a lot of great new ideas coming up from people, and it's not regional; it's around the world. I'm seeing people really starting to think out of the box and develop new things. Whether they can bring them to fruition and make them profitable is another thing. I'm seeing a few of the old and bold businesses really starting to come under pressure, but probably more from a corporate view. Like I was working with a financial services company the other day. I come out of financial services. This is one of the biggest in South Africa. And the main thing the brokers and advisors are worried about is they don't think they'll have a job in or a business in 3 years because of AI, right? And, to an extent, they're right. If they haven't built relationships with their client base, they can be taken over by AI. So I think there is that part of it. I don't have a statistic. I can't give you a piece of data, Rob, but my gut feel is, look, it's like, I look at it like this. My wife said it. I mean, she's smarter than me. So she said this. She said, when they brought in the calculator, everyone's parents said, nobody's going to be smart anymore. You have to use your logarithm table. Now, she never used the logarithm table because she's a lot younger than me. But the same thing when computers came in. Everybody said, you can't use a computer at school. Kids have got to use their own cognitive thinking, etc. None of that made any difference. So AI and all this new stuff we've got today is not going to make any real difference. It comes back to people. And I always have a question I ask, especially if I'm addressing tech conferences or anything like that. I always say, if technology is so great, why are none of us any better off than our parents were? Why are we all still living middle-class lives?
Yeah. Good
and
point.
You know what? We may have a new washing machine, and we may have, Alexa at home that chooses our songs for us. But, in real terms, we have got the same struggles. In fact, Rob, I think the answer to your question, I think I finally got an answer after rambling for 2 minutes. But I think the answer to your question is, in the last 6 months, I've never seen entrepreneurs working harder. I get more emails from people on a Sunday afternoon or after 10 o'clock at night than I ever have before. And, for years and years and years, we haven't worked Fridays. So we only work Mondays to Thursdays. But I'm seeing so much pressure coming on me even to have meetings on Fridays and do things on Saturdays from people, which I reject, almost always. I think we probably work 4 Fridays a year. But I think that's what's happening. So I think this whole technological bubble that we're in at the moment is creating more expectation from people. And if you look at data that comes, I have a saying, most people focus on doing the wrong things right. In other words, they spend all their day focusing on this, but it actually doesn't matter. So what we try and do is we try and focus on this that does matter. We just forget the rest of the stuff. There's a bit of data that came out of Rescue Time. They're an app. And that data, they've got 150 million users. This is a really interesting statistic. I can give you more, but this is the one I remember. The average user on a cell phone picks up their phone every 6 minutes during a day. How in the hell can you get anything done?
Oh, no.
You can't. I mean, that's the biggest distraction. It's worse than a drug habit in a lot of ways. I mean, it's become to where now we have email everywhere, which brings me up to all of that information that you just provided there, Mike. My next question for you and what you're seeing, do we see a higher rate of burnout than we've ever seen?
100%. All over the world. Doesn't matter what industry, doesn't matter whether it's corporate, entrepreneur. It's a disease. It's an epidemic. It's a cancer on society. And I think this comes from, even COVID didn't, the whole pandemic thing, which I won't get into, but from people, and I'm talking about corporates having to have people working at home and that, these people are going, well, I can't work because my kids are at home, so I have to wait for them to go to bed. So now I'm working at 9 o'clock at night till 1 in the morning. Then I'm up at 6 to get my kids ready for school, etc. Like, it's a recipe for disaster. We have to take control of our lives. And each and every one of us listening to this, myself included, have to take control of our lives. And we have to go, look, we can only achieve as much as we can achieve. I know when I work well, I'm a morning person. 7 o'clock in the morning I'm working. 5 o'clock I'm pretty much done, right? It's now 5:30. You're my last thing I'm doing today, and I'm pretty much done. So
I'm done. I'm not 100% is what I'm hearing, but hey, I'm here.
It's an honor to be the last person on your to-do list, Mike. I appreciate that.
We don't use to-do lists. We haven't used to-do lists in 8 years. I banned them.
Oh, right? Good for you. Good for
Nobody
you.
in our company uses to-do lists. We have a whole different system, which keeps us to-do lists literally mean that you will fail every day of your life because no one ticks off everything on their to-do list. So you get a mindset of failure. So we just banned them 8 years ago or 9 years ago, 2015. Oh, that's 10 years ago. So,
So I see that with even people, how they manage their staff and where everybody wants us to have this huge to-do list and they never finish it. And then it becomes the to-do list that they keep copying over day after day, and they forget to change information on the to-do list. And it becomes a habit, and it doesn't become where they can think 3 steps ahead or any of those pieces.
Exactly.
What did you replace to-do list with? I'm kind of curious.
Look, it's a difficult question for us to answer in this environment, but I'll give you the basis of it. We didn't replace it with the system, we replaced it with a mindset. So that's the first thing. And we said there's 4 things that any business does. They either want to get something, they want to groom something, and I'll get into this, they want to grow something, or they want something golden to happen, like the golden fleece, right? And so most people want to get either more money or time. Most people want to groom relationships. Most people want to grow their business, and the gold things are things like I want to write a book or create a whole, suite of products that, everybody's going to buy online or something like that. So when we analyzed this, we realized that by using apps, and I studied myself, and this is my own statistic from 2015, which got us to shift. My wife asked me, why do you have a to-do list? Because she didn't have one for years before that. And I said, because it's the right thing to do. And she said, do you like failing every day? And then I said, shit, she's right. So I went and put an app on my computer, which was Rescue Time. It didn't cost anything then. I think it costs something now, but I still use it. And I realized then that in my online time, which was averaging around 4 hours a day back in 2015, I still remember the statistic. 12.8% of statistics are not made up on the spot, but this one I know. That 46% of my time online, so roughly my time online is 4 hours a day, so about half of that, 2 hours a day. Guess what this wonderful chairman of 5 companies with all these international businesses was doing for 2 hours a day? Design. Yep. I was a designer. So I went, my goodness, I never knew that. I'm designing a Facebook ad. I'm designing a presentation. I'm designing a this. I'm designing a that. We just went out and hired a designer, and I got 2 hours a day back, 10 hours a week. That's when we decided, let's not work Fridays.
That's awesome. That's
awesome.
So first thing you have to do is study this. So the first thing is, so on a Monday to Thursday, all we do is get and groom. So this is grooming relationships right now. I'm grooming a relationship with you guys, and I'm grooming a relationship with the audience. We might end up doing something at some stage in the future, a joint venture, a partnership, or just be buddies and hang out. Who knows? Some people in the audience are going to go, hey, let's check these people out and see what they are. That's grooming. But what I don't do now is I don't work on website. I don't work on copy. I don't look at our briefing, our marketing person or anything like that. They're all grow things. So what we did with the grow stuff is we went, let's not do any of that. Let's outsource all of that. So we've outsourced almost everything of that now, whether it be having staff that do it, like a full-time designer, or whether it be having somebody else that do it, like collecting the money that, people owe you in your business. So from a Monday to Thursday, I'm only getting and grooming. So today, if I look at today, to give you an example, you are meeting number 9 or 10, if I have a quick count today. Most meetings go for an hour, so therefore there's my day, having meetings today. It's not always like that. Yesterday was the same. Tomorrow's the same. Thursday, I don't have one meeting. I'm doing something else entirely. And Friday, we don't work. So, but in a week, therefore, in these 3 days, I'm having 30 meetings. And half of those are get meetings, and our get is about revenue. So I'm probably doing 15 meetings a week where I'm pitching somebody something. If you're listening to this, are you? Or are you doing one a month? Because you're so busy working on your website copy, which nobody's going to look at.
No, and especially if you're not driving traffic to that website copy.
Exactly.
So it's all mixed into there. I mean, what if so I kind of do that same kind of principle of the whole piece, to where we have staff that does each of those pieces. Where we make money is doing the podcast. We make money by creating video. We make money by coaching and, giving over insights to the different members and creating those relationships within the platform. But really, you don't make money by doing the rest of the stuff. It's having someone that watches all of your shit and decides, oh, I can, this just automatically needs to be done. That's what, environment and staff that we have underneath us to do those things, because I don't make money by writing that. Yes, we make money by them coming to the website and signing up, but it's not worth my time over there, because it has to come across as my personality or Dean's personality, the combination there, to be able to do that. And a lot of business owners, it doesn't matter if we're talking about a landscaper or if we're talking about a big tech corporation, they're spending time doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Dean, you called it out a couple of years ago. There was a guy inside of Windsor, and he goes, he absolutely doesn't know how to work on. He doesn't know how to work on his business. He's always working in his business, because he was outside of the storefront, if I remember correctly, blowing leaves, and the staff was inside on their phone.
Yeah. And so you what you said earlier, though, is so many people spend so much time working on the things that they shouldn't be working on instead of things that matter. They work on the things that don't matter, and that's a hard bit for small business owners and entrepreneurs. That gets hard sometimes. You go, well, I have time but no money. But on the flip side of that is you're doing a $12 task an hour when you should be doing the $100 task an hour that makes you the business that you are. And that's really difficult for a lot of small business owners to get across. I mean, smaller sized businesses especially, but I've even seen it happen in middle management, where middle managers or upper management is doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They're doing EA tasks. Let somebody else help you with that. You do the things you do to make the company money.
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to the number one reason entrepreneurs fail is because they don't know who they are. And it comes back to that statement. So a listener listening to us is going to go, oh, that makes sense. So tomorrow, instead of like blowing the leaves in front of the shop, I'm going to make 3 calls and I'm going to get 3 strategic alliances to bring customers to my business. Then they get there and they go, I'll just have a coffee. Yeah, no, oh, gee, the leaves are out there. I'll quickly blow them, then I'll make my strategic alliance calls. And they never get around to it. And they go, oh, I didn't make 3 yesterday, but I won't blow the leaves today. I'll make 6 calls today, and that never happens. They're never going to do that. So blow your leaves, but take 15 minutes to blow your leaves. Then, one of the best people, I don't have mentors like people go, oh, Tony Robbins is my mentor. I don't have any of those guys. But one of my mentors in life, and I think I've only ever had 2, was a guy I worked with back when I was like about in my early 20s. And he would walk into our office every morning. Like, we'd all get to the office, we'd go to the coffee machine, we'd go, hey, Rob, what did you do last night? Or did you watch that show on blah, blah, blah? Not this guy. He'd walk into the office, he would ignore us flat. He'd walk into his office, shut the door, pick up the phone, and ring the first 2 people on the list he created last night before he left the office. And as soon as he'd spoken to 2, if the first one didn't answer, he'd go on to the second one. If that one answered, then he'd go on to the third one. And so he'd get his 2, he'd make his 2 meetings for the day. So he had sales appointments ready to go. Then he'd come out to the coffee machine 15 minutes later and say, what did you guys watch on TV last night? I did the math on that. And I worked out that based on the commissions that I was making in my 20s at doing what we were doing at that stage, he was making $168,000 while we were drinking coffee. And we never got around to making the appointments.
And he probably dreaded making those phone calls. And that's why he probably did it at the very beginning of the day, because then it was done, it was over, didn't have to think about it again.
And 20 years later, he sold that business, which was it was in financial planning. He sold that business. It was just him, his wife, and a secretary for $3.5 million, and lived happily ever after. And he's still alive and 75 years old and still spending all the money he made.
That's awesome.
That's absolutely awesome. So when you're doing your coaching or when you're doing any of your masterminds and you're talking about, here is a business owner, here's all their staff underneath and how they delegate that information, how do you coach on that side? I'm kind of curious, especially with all of your international kind of experiences that you've had across the world.
Well, I think the first thing is to have the right people in the right jobs. And You know, if we're being true to our essence, I got to tell you a funny story. But if we're being true to our essence, we've got to let people do what they want to an extent within our business. So we sat down with somebody in our business, and they're in marketing, and he'll probably listen to this because he's the one who's going to actually put this out when this is finished and all the links come to us. So he'll be listening to this. So hi, Chris, how are you doing? But when we sat down to him, we said, so what do you want to do? And where do you think you've got a lot of value? He said, I really would like to look after animals. And we went, hang on, you know we don't do that in our business, don't you? He goes, yeah, but that's what I really want to do. So we sat down, we really thought about that, and we found a way for him, if he hits targets, to be able to spend a good deal of his time looking after animals. I don't think he's going anywhere. He loves us. I mean, yesterday was so weird. My wife sent him 5 messages and then sent him a WhatsApp saying, Chris, where the hell are you? You haven't been around all day. And he came back, he said, oh, hi, Lundy, it's a public holiday. And we went, oh, crap, it is, because we're so international. We don't know what a public holiday is on a Monday, right? So yeah, but I mean, he's still responding to that stuff. So I think the first answer to your question is you've got to let people start to bring their essence into their jobs. And you've got to fill the gaps. You've got to find a way, instead of going, no, you must do this. Yeah, here's a mistake a lot of people make. They have a great salesperson, they turn them into a sales manager, and then they become the world's worst sales manager. It's because they're not meant to be in that job. They love the cutting edge of things. They love being out there with people. They love closing the deal and things like that. You know, you've got to find out who people are, and you've got to find out what's in their heart and then place them there. So the last thing, when we're employing anybody, or when we coach any of our clients when they're employing anybody, the one thing we don't tell them to look at is people's CVs. It's a waste of time. We say we get people to, we have a very specific recruitment process which works really well, but it ends up with what I call Survivor Treasure Island, where you get like the 10 best people you've got in the one interview, and then you ask them to select which one of them is going to have the job, and then you sit back and watch the games. And but what that shows you, because everybody's so good at BSing an interview, but what those processes show you is that who's going to act like you want them to act in a high pressure situation when you already know that they tick all the boxes to do the actual job. You want to see, have they got the personality? Have they got the skills? Have they got the wherefore to act on their own, so they're not coming to you all the time? So it's those sort of things that we're working with entrepreneurs at, so that the pressure comes off them, so that they can delegate. You can do that with contractors. It doesn't have to be with staff. You can do that with people you get off Fiverr almost, right? No, I haven't done it off Fiverr, but I've done it off Upwork. So so you can do those sort of things. I don't know if that answers your question, but I might go part of the way to it. Give me a 2 out of 10 on that.
Well, I heard someone say something really interesting. I think it was on a YouTube video I was watching. He said 80% of statistics are wrong, but of those 80%, 65% of them are within a 20% range.
I can't possibly work that out, but it sounds brilliant. It sounds like what a bank will tell you.
And my data brain was like, well, that's like it equals, well, yeah, whatever.
That's like there were 2 guys in a balloon, and one guy pulls out a map, and he's like, I think we're lost. Do you know where we are? And the other guy goes, I've got no idea. He says, hang on, there's a farmer down that field. Let's call him. They call down the farmer, and they say, excuse me, can you tell me where we are? And the farmer looks up and he says, yeah, you're in a balloon. And one guy says to the other guy, that farmer's obviously an accountant. He said, why would you say that? He said, because his information is 100% correct but totally useless.
I've heard something similar to that because of my background being an engineer. They said, well, where are we? And the guy goes, you're in a balloon about 50 feet off the ground. And they go, well, you must be an engineer. So so every profession kind of has that, because you gave me accurate information but didn't help me at all with what
Exactly.
you're doing. So
Exactly.
That's awesome.
I think you can almost do that for almost any industry that's out there. I mean, but I think a lot of business owners have the problem of, being blue sky all the time, and they have a lot going on in their head. Dean wrote a blog, and I talk about this all the time about, most business owners are narcissistic in some way, shape, or form. I think most business owners also have some form of ADHD and all the crap that goes on in their head. So we come up with all these ideas up here, but we never, from a lot of the business owners that I meet, I talk to, they never get that information to come down and that personality to come inside of their business, which I think is everything we just talked about inside of this entire podcast for, how that brain works. But if there's one tip you have, Mike, for someone being able to get all that up and out and get it out to their personality to match their brand and match everything inside of their business, what would it be?
Well, I think the one thing that triggered when you asked that question, Rob, was every business owner needs space. And I can't tell you over the years how many people I've talked to like this. You need a holiday, right? You need to go away, book a cabin for the weekend and go, don't take your phone except for emergencies. Just sit and be at one with nature. And there are 4 different types of environments. I find that people are either ocean people, they're forest people, they're desert people, or they're mountain people. So whatever one of those resonates with you when I'm speaking, take some space. If you're an ocean person, go and sit by the ocean and just take your journal. Nothing more, and just sit there and think. If you can do that for just a few hours a week, and the more busy you are, the better. And I'll give you a great example of that. I had a client in New Zealand. He's an engineer, actually, Dean, a really good one. And, I'll give you the outcome of what happened. He had a company with about 3 or 4 other engineers in it, and he was working from like 7 in the morning till like 6 at night and exhausted. And I said to him, do you think that a couple of mornings a week, instead of going to the office, you could pick up your journal? And his favorite place was a cafe that was in a forest. And I said, go to the cafe in the forest with your journal. What time do they open? He said 7 o'clock. I said, be there at 7 o'clock and don't leave until 9 o'clock. And just sit there, have your brekkie, have your coffee, write down your thoughts, etc., etc. Just taking that space. Let's fast track 18 months later. He was employing 25 people and got the contract to rebuild Christchurch, New Zealand after the earthquake. And sometimes it's the simplest things that make the biggest difference. So the first and maybe the most important thing I could tell you guys, for the people that are listening, is if you're busy, if you're overwhelmed, you need to take space. If you say you haven't got time to take space, then you definitely need to take space. You need to just shut off and go away. Take an extra day, take a 3-day weekend. I was with a speaker from Australia many years ago, and I thought he had some of the best advice I'd heard. I don't know if he ever implemented it himself, but I implemented it, and it worked really well for me. And he said, 3 weekends a year, go away with your family. Take your family away, right? 3 weekends a year, leave the kids at home or with the grandparents, and take your spouse away. And 3 weekends a year, go away by yourself. It will revolutionize your life and your thinking and your relationship. He's 100% right.
I can see that. I can totally see that. We don't get out of our own brain. We've all been guilty of it. We've all been, and you can only get so much out in so much amount of time. And you can't do everything. It just ain't going to be that way. I've used the title of lead janitor. Dean's used the title of lead janitor. We clean up shit all day long. That just is what it is across the board. But Mike, if anybody's interested in being able to learn about your company and get more information and all that stuff, where would they find you at?
Look, it's very simple. I mentioned the website before. There's a number of things you can do on there. circleofexcellence.biz, B-I-Z. Otherwise, you can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. So it's Mike Handcock, Handcock. There's very few of us in the world. I used to be the only one. There seems to be more. They're breeding. But you'll find me there. And I'd love to connect with you. And guys, it's been just fantastic. What you guys do is amazing. You're really, really good at it. There's a lot of people doing podcasts in the world, and 80% of them aren't very good, but you're definitely in the top 1 or 2% that I've done. As I said, I do about 3 podcasts a week and have done for the last couple of years. So congratulations. If there's any other way I can help you or your audience, just let me know. And I really want to thank you for your time and the effort that you put into this. I know it ain't easy.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure visiting with you, Mike. And I always enjoy talking to guests because I always glean something new and it triggers new things. And I think that's the whole point of the podcast. And I want to thank you for that today.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on, and let's definitely connect and kind of see where things go on there. And I love today's podcast. You're a great guest on it. So,
Yes, thanks, guys.
and thank you for the kind words. Thank you so much.